Good morning and welcome. You're listening live to Heart at KMET Live program. This program aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist in private practice in beautiful Encino, California.
Welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Robert Jaffe. I am also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified hypnotherapist. And I'm here with Dr. Rashidian to share with you some of what we've learned over many years of study and practice on how to feel more loving and joyful every day of your life, notwithstanding what's going on around us.
Exactly.
Yes, we can do it no matter what's going on around us, if we choose to and if we learn how to.
Right.
And so we always dedicate this program to you, our listeners, and we want to let you know that you contain within you everything you need to feel happy, joyous, and free. We are born into our world as our loving, authentic, true selves, and we come in open, curious, we come in honest, we are all sexual, and we also come in trusting. And we also have abilities that we can access. We can learn how to be calm. We can learn how to be emotionally available and connected. And we can also learn to be confident and compassionate.
And every time Dr. Robert, you say these amazing qualities, it just I realize that as much as we have them, they are gift of God that He has given to us. Still, many of us aren't able to recognize them and appreciate them and use them, right?
Yes, and that's why we're here. We're here to assist people.
Exactly. So we're here once a week on Friday mornings at 9 o'clock, and we are happy to be here to share some of what we know, and hope that what we are offering you, it can take you to a further place, to a better place in life. And we would like to invite you to contact us, to share us your concerns, what you think that you want to hear at this show, because that only help us to provide you a program that you love to hear about and you love to listen to. Our phone number here is 951-922-3532. That number again is 951-922-3532. So, Dr. Jaffe.
Yes.
What do we have today? What's going on today in this world that now that we are all, it's a mandatory, it's a law to stay home.
Well,
and topic you told me this morning that is communication altogether.
Well, I think this is an especially important time to learn the basics of communication. We all think that we know how to communicate, and of course we all do.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to communicate, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn how to communicate in a way that makes it more fun and more rewarding and more enlightening for ourselves and the people we communicate with. And there's a number of things that we're going to talk about today about communication. And we invite you to call in and talk about your own experience in communicating effectively and communicating not so effectively. Let's find out what works and what doesn't work.
Exactly. Because why we want your experiences is because so many other people share your experience as well. And then by listening how you have been able to make it work for yourself or not, we are also helping others to take a look at their communication method with everybody around them. That includes their loved one, their co-workers, community all together. And we know that we all need to start with ourselves in order to make a change. So how one person's change impacts a community, we see that communication actually, it's a main tool that does that. At least one of the main tools that makes a positive change or not so positive change in a community.
Yes, so I have a few quotes here. I was having a hard time deciding which quote to use,
Well, do.
and I'm gonna give you all of them. I have 3 of them that I like a lot. The first one is by Judge Learned Hand, and he says, "The mutual confidence on which all else depends can be maintained only by an open mind and a brave reliance upon free discussion." An open mind and a brave reliance on free discussion, which means that we have to be dedicated to speaking and discovering the truth rather than trying to force someone to believe what we believe. That's what I get from this quote. And I think we've had a hard time in this country doing that, in that people seem more polarized in believing that their way is the right way.
Right.
And what I want to say is that this country was founded on free discussion, and that to the extent that we can, well, I'll give you the other 2 quotes and then I'll get into it. The other quote is, "Nature has given us 2 ears and only 1 mouth." And of course that means that we should listen twice as much as we speak. And the other one, that one is by Benjamin Disraeli. The other one is by Henry David Thoreau, and he says, "It takes 2 to speak the truth, 1 to speak and the other to hear." So those are the quotes that I picked out for today. All of them basically saying that it's important for us to really listen and listen to understand first before we listen to respond.
So that's the key word.
Yes.
Is listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's not listening to judge. It's not listening to immediately, reflect back. It's not listening that, you need to correct. It's listening to understand.
Listening to understand. And of course, if you're listening to respond, then you're not really listening, because as the other person is talking, after they start talking, you're immediately trying to formulate your response before they're even finished talking. And how often does that happen? Happens a lot, right? So we're all guilty of that, so to speak, that we're not actually listening to understand the person, we're listening to see if we agree or not.
And that's what we do in therapy, by the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are listening to our clients to understand their point of view, to understand how that viewpoint has been, constructed in their mind and in their belief system, and how they are actually operating, performing based on that. And unless we can understand the person and empathize with that, it's going to be far more difficult for us as therapists to reflect back, right?
Yeah.
But majority of people, of course, are not therapists, and they all have their own understanding of how to communicate and how to respond back, that's where conflicts starts.
Right. And you used a really good word. You said empathize. And I want to say that all communication, no matter what we're communicating about, we could be communicating about how to split the atom, or we could be communicating about where to go for dinner. Not today, of course, nothing's open for dinner, but if we were communicating about that, that would be one communication. Doesn't matter really the content. So I want to give you another quote, and I don't remember who said this, but I like this one too, and that is, "People don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care."
Exactly. Yes.
And that has to do with empathy, right? What is empathy? Empathy is the belief that with every communication, the person is communicating a thought, which is about the content. Like I said, we could talk about splitting the atom or going to dinner, but it's also about the feeling behind it. So what do you feel about going out to dinner? What do you feel about splitting the atom? Do you feel excited? Do you feel bored? Do you feel lethargic? Do you feel happy? What is that? And that will be communicated in every communication, because every communication we give body language, facial expression, and voice tone, and it changes our energy. And depending upon what our energy is, and how we say what it is we want to say, will determine to a large extent how what kind of response we get.
Right. So then, communication, as you described it, it's not just the words that we are using to express what we want to talk about, or how we feel about what we're going to be talking about. It's also the way our facial expression is reflecting based on what we want to say. It's our body language, it's our movement of our hands, it's the body gesture, whether I'm in a distance or whether I'm close by, whether I'm leaning forward or I'm leaning backward. These are are indication of where I am in terms of my feelings and emotions and my beliefs about what I'm talking about. So, and then we are able to show body language much faster than our words as they come out of our mouth. And so before actually we say something, the receiver of our communication is able to understand about where are we, what is our attitude at the moment, what is our feeling at the moment, and kind of positions them in a format that whether they can lean forward to us, or they need to keep a distance away from us, or or they need to be on guard with us, or how to stay within that communication framework at the moment. So our body language sets the tone even before we say anything, and sets the tone for the listener to how to position themselves when the communication actually starts. And all of this happens at the split of a second, and it really doesn't need any time for anybody to position themselves.
Right. So feelings are always being communicated between people. The problem is that they're not always being communicated explicitly, and that's what you were saying, is that through body language, facial expression, and voice tone, which often happens unconsciously, we are communicating those feelings, and we have to be aware that we are communicating those feelings, because the feelings that we're communicating is probably more important than the words that we're saying. So I can say, I like you, or I like you, or I like you. See, and
yeah, I like you.
Yeah, I like you. and so
I like you.
Yeah. So we're about to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about feelings and how we can express them in a way that makes it more palatable and more interesting for us and for the person we're communicating with.
See you back shortly.
We'll see you
at
shortly.
KMET.
Okay.
Welcome back from our commercial break. For those of you just tuning into Heart to Heart, we would like to recap our discussion. It's about communication, and for those of you who are listening to us, we encourage you to call in and share your experience with us. Our number is 951-922-3532. Also, we would like to invite you to look at our YouTube at heart-to-heart.online/YouTube, and we have some free downloads for you there for you to read about, and also to share your opinion with us and share your comments and questions. For archive references, please go to Google, SoundCloud, KMET 1490. Go to playlist, check on Heart to Heart, and then I was told that that's second one in the list. And tell us what you think. And this program belongs to you, so we would like to offer you what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about, and that way, we're going to get more out of this program. So, Dr. Jaffe, Dr.
Well,
Robert?
we've been talking about communication. Right, and now we're asking you to communicate with us.
Exactly.
So that we know whether you are getting things of value and whether there's something else you'd like to hear from us. We're happy to do that. We're talking about communicating feelings as well as ideas and thoughts. And we're saying that every communication is a communication of feeling, even if we're not talking about feelings. And the reason for that is because as human beings, we pick up on the other person's subconscious cues. And we give off our own subconscious cues, which are body language, facial expression, and voice tone. Now, the subconscious cues can be made conscious. We can be aware of our body language. We can shape our body language. We can shape our voice tone. We can shape our facial expression. But at the same time, most of the time we're not. Most of the time we're not consciously doing that. Most of the time we're just talking, and it's coming out the way it's coming out. So,
and also, as you're talking, I just had this image of a child who is just walking, and then with shoulders down, with the head down, and then mom or dad or somebody else will ask, "Hi, honey, everything's okay?" and say, "I'm fine."
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, I'm fine. And then we see that that's not, definitely doesn't sound like that. The child is fine, or is having fun, or everything's fine.
Right. So yeah. So what you're talking about right now is great, because what I wanted to say is we have a choice all the time between acting out our feelings or talking out our feelings. So if we're angry, let's say, and we throw a tantrum, or throw a fit, what does that look like, right? So you stomp out of the kitchen, you slam the door behind you, you yell, you raise your voice. That's acting out your feelings.
Yeah, so the husband comes in or the wife comes in and say, "Honey, is everything okay? There's lots of sounds happening here." "I'm fine."
Yeah.
So you kind of roll your eyes, and then your face kind of becomes blunted, and then you say, "I'm fine," but are you really fine? I'm even scared to get close to you.
Yeah, there's a euphemism in psychology where we make fun of the word fine.
Right.
And we say F stands for freaked out, but you get the idea. I is insecure, N is neurotic, and E is emotional. So I'm freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm fine.
I'm fine.
So, but basically what I'm saying is we have a choice whether we act out our feelings, and you'll notice that children, and especially young children, act out their feelings all the time.
Yes.
So what does it mean when we, as adults, are acting out our feelings? It means we're acting like young children, right? And is there something wrong with that? Well, we're much more likely to be misunderstood and have the other person or other people become critical, judgmental, and defensive with us when we're acting out our feelings.
Right.
So stomping out of the kitchen, slamming the door, could be said by saying, "I'm really angry. I don't want to talk about this more right now, and I'm feeling overwhelmed."
Yeah, sometimes even maintaining silence while acting out our feelings is a communication. So
yeah.
You see that you get up in the morning and you're not saying anything, but you're just acting, and you're just your facial expression shows that you're sort of pissed off. You're still tired. You really are not up yet. All of that. So there is indication that something's not right there, and you still haven't found a way to actually actively talk about, what's going on with you.
Yeah, and it's okay to choose not to talk about it,
Right.
but it's important to communicate what's going on. And if you choose not to talk about it, it's important to say, I don't want to talk about it right now. Give me some time, and I'll come back and then talk about it when I'm not in the midst of it.
And besides, you don't listen to me anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
Doesn't matter what I say, you don't listen to me anyway, you do what you want. So you see, how one form of communication kind of trigger another communication that's not really so pleasant. And this is how we say that, feelings are contagious, right? So you bring in an angry feeling, we provoke angry feeling in the other person, or we bring sadness, the other person gets sad. So, and these are all done automatically, not that we plan to do it. We're not even aware that this is happening.
And then we've learned, I think most people now know that it's become sort of a trite saying that feelings aren't right or wrong. So absolutely, that's true. Your anger, your sadness, your joy, your excitement, it's not right or wrong. It just is. But what happens is now, because people know that, they use the word feeling instead of simply saying their opinion. So they say, well, I feel that, right? And anytime you say I feel that, you're misspeaking,
right?
Because you're not feeling that, you're thinking that. So when you say you make me feel, or you make me frustrated, or I feel that you're stupid, those are actually misstatements, because you're not feeling that anything. What you're doing is thinking that. I think that you're making me frustrated. And the truth is that people cannot make you frustrated. They cannot make you angry. They cannot make you sad, but we do have an influence on people. So when we influence people, obviously, if the other person goes along with it, then yes, in a sense they've made you, but they haven't really made you, because whatever you think about creates the feelings inside of you. So you can say you can say to somebody, I've lost my keys. And the other person then can say, oh, are you feeling frustrated? And the person can say, no, I'm not feeling frustrated, right? But another person can say, yes, I am feeling frustrated. The fact that you lost your keys doesn't make you feel frustrated. Some people will feel frustrated. Other people may get curious. I wonder where I left them. And so we make assumptions about what people are feeling, and then we act or speak based on the assumptions without ever checking it out.
Yeah, I mean, we see that sometimes we say to, a couple, tell each other, oh, don't get upset. And then he said, I'm not upset. Well, you sound upset, but I'm not upset, right? So that's an example of the fact that we are not listening. We are giving our own interpretation of what we are seeing,
right,
coming from the other person. And then a big aspect of communication is listening and not just come up with our own immediate interpretations of what we see. So that ties up to what I said earlier, that the way our body language communicates with us ahead of time sets the tone for the listener to come up with their own judgment about what may be going on in the person.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about being right and judging, because that's a major issue in many relationships, and that's a lot, and that's probably I'm thinking right now the main reason why people get into arguments is because they want to be right, and the other reason is because there's been a miscommunication. In therapy, we say that people fight over things without knowing really what they're fighting over. But usually the fight is about who's right and who's wrong.
Or at least that's the way they think it should be. Somebody has to be right, and
Somebody has to be
wrong.
right, and somebody has to be wrong. And what we're doing here in Heart to Heart is we're talking a lot about our egos and a lot about our heart or our spirit. The ego always wants to be right. The ego gets an adrenaline rush from being right. The ego gets an even stronger adrenaline rush from being right when we can show that the other person is wrong. The ego kind of wants to crush the other person. And so when you're in a relationship of any kind, with a child, with your partner, with a friend, and you're getting into an argument, the task is to keep the ego out of it. And what does that mean? That means that your need to be right is subservient to your need to find the truth. And that's a big challenge for people. But so when people are speaking, and if your need to be right is paramount, then you're listening to disprove what they're saying.
And what I just remembered listening to you, Robert, is that if the people who want to be right, and then they get an indication that within the communication dynamic that they have at the moment, they're not going to be perceived as being right, then they go into the victim role. Right? So then so either they have to be right or they are a victim of a situation.
Right. So give me an example of that.
So for example, one says, I'm right about this, you never listen to me, you don't understand me, or you want to have it to be your way and all of that, and then the other person confronts back and says, well, that's not true, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and then the person says, all my life I've been this, all my life, I have put up with this all my life, so that's the victim role. So if they can't be correct, if they can be perceived as right, then there is no other, they don't see any other alternative for themselves, and this is I believe it's unconscious that they automatically regret back to a place of I'm the victim of this relationship, I'm the victim of this communication in hand, and I'm not listened to.
Right. Yeah. So
that's what the victim role becomes. To me, it becomes you didn't hear me out, you didn't hear what I'm saying.
Right. So when we're communicating, and the intention is to express an opinion or express what you believe is a fact,
right?
You can say, this is what I heard, this is what I believe. And instead of saying to the other person, no, you're wrong, which can then trigger an ego battle, you can say, tell me why you believe that. Where did that come from? And you listen carefully to the person, and here's the key to communication. If you think the other person is insane, then you're having a discussion with an insane person. Nothing is going to be accomplished.
Exactly.
So the first thing is to say to yourself, if this person isn't insane, then they may have some validity in what they're saying. And the first part I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to what I can agree with or what makes sense to me. And then I'm going to tell them, oh yeah, I believe that too, or I understand why you feel that way, or yeah, I have thought that way too, or I do think that way. Then if you don't agree, then you can say, and here's another piece that I'm now thinking differently about, and I'll put it out to you, and you let me know what you think.
This is a good example. We see that in therapy, that couples come in and then they talk and they say, when we tell them some of what we just shared, they say, oh, but you haven't dealt with, I don't know, for example, Jack, or you don't know Mary. Trust me, if you know Mary, then you know what I'm talking about. So that's the level of hopelessness and helplessness that couple feel as a result of their experiences and communicating with each other. And so when a person gets to that level of helplessness and hopelessness, that, oh, you have no idea what I'm talking about, you haven't met this, or you haven't heard him when he yells at me or she nags at me, right? So I think this is something that when we come back from commercial break, we can talk about and reflect on some of it, at least for today, because this topic is so vast and is so deep and so important and so broad that obviously we can't just touch all of it in one program, and perhaps we need to communicate more about this. But I think this is, maybe we can just give some tips on what do we say to couples who are helpless and hopeless as a result of unhealthy communication that they have with each other.
And when we come back, we're going to talk more about the you message and the I message.
The I message. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we'll see you shortly
we'll
back
see you shortly.
after commercial break.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and we have how long? 3 minutes. Okay. Jesse, what do you think? Yeah. 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 Well, that's what we do for living, relationship.
Yeah, people don't talk enough. Correct. I hope you didn't do that on the first date.
Lots of chemistry there, I guess.
I really like you. Let's go hit the sack. No.
You're my kind of a guy. That's what I say too, But some people don't think that way.
No.
They think after 1 or 2, 3,
No,
4.
they're thinking the opposite. They're thinking, well, if the sex works, then I can get to know him. But if I get to know him and then sex doesn't work, well, that was a waste of time.
That's a waste of time. That's your way of thinking?
No, I said that's the way some people think.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's never easy.
Yeah.
But then it starts with ourselves. If we know what we want and how we want to say what we want, that's half of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Welcome back from our commercial break. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here. For those of you who are tuning into Heart to Heart, welcome. And our discussion today is about communication. And we would like to encourage you to call us and share your experience with us. Our number here is 951-922-3532. Also, we're encouraging you to go and watch our YouTube at heart-to-heart.online/YouTube, and we have free downloads for you there that we hope that you can download and read and enjoy them, and also send us your comments and tell us what you think about what you hear, what you're reading, And what else would you like to be there for you? Because this program essentially is for you. You can also go to let's see, SoundCloud, KMET 1490, go to playlist, and Heart to Heart program is there where you can see our archived program. So Dr. Robert, we were talking about communication, and then you said that you have another aspect of it to share with us.
Yes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the usage of the word you and I.
Yes.
Right. So there's no blanket statement to say you should never use you. You should always use I. But how do you use it is the question.
You. I.
You. So when you say you and you follow the word with should.
You should. Oh my goodness.
Should.
Those words.
We call that in our psychology environment. We call that shoulding on people.
Right.
Right. When you should on somebody, you should on them. And anytime you say that, you're making some big assumptions, right? You're making the assumption that you know what's best for them. You are putting them down because you're telling them that they don't know what's best for them, so they have to, they need that advice from you. And you're also letting people, giving people the sense that what they're doing right now isn't okay.
And sometimes we don't use the word should, but what other words that we use is an indication of the same thing. For example, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were you thinking? Or why didn't you call me first?
Right. Right.
So it's not always the word should. It's also other words that they are kind of synonym to the word should, right?
Yes.
So and ultimately, we're making the person, like you said, oh, you made a huge mistake.
Right. So how then can we say, can we give that message in a way that isn't a put down to the person? And remember, we were talking before for a moment about the ego and the spirit. So the ego is always looking to be right. So the use of the word should, of course, makes us right. You should, you should call this person and tell them da 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 da. You should act this way. You should stand up for yourself. You should. And every time you use the word, you're making yourself right, and you're giving yourself a shot of adrenaline, and making the other person feel at least not as good as you are. And that's a boost to the ego. So if you're not going to use that, and you're not going to boost your ego, then what you want to do is you want to connect with the person and have the person feel like you care about them. And also you want to give them your opinion if, and here's the big if they want it. If
Correct.
they want it.
Right.
So I have some thoughts about what you're saying, about how I might handle it, and if you're interested, I'll share them with you. And the person may not respond to you and just go on with what they're talking about. And if they don't respond to you, your answer is no, I don't want to hear about it, right? So you can put out the fact that you have an idea or some thoughts about what may be helpful to them, and you can ask them if they would like to hear it. Now, if they do say yes, a good suggestion is to put out one.
Right. So what about the person when one person just continues to say, I want to da 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 da, I want to do this, that, I want to go there, I want. So it just becomes the use of the word I becomes so focused on the one person, to the point that other may feel that, oh, well, okay, just have to follow. I don't see any opportunity for me to jump in and say what I want,
Well,
or how to collaborate.
Well, now you're talking about somebody who's making the conversation all about them.
Right.
Right. So I'll comment on that, but I want to finish up with this idea of shooting on someone, because it's very important for us to be respectful in our communication, and to give the sense in every communication that the person that I'm communicating with matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
They matter as a human being. Their ideas matter to me. Their feelings matter to me. And I can't do that if I'm busy thinking whether I agree with them or whether I would do it differently than they're doing. So that to me is the primary thing, is the other person has to feel that you care about them. People don't don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care.
So with that say, that means to me also that we don't necessarily always have to give our own opinion about something that we hear.
I think a lot of times we don't have to give our own opinion, because it isn't being solicited,
right.
And all it's doing it is filling up space.
Exactly.
Now, if you're having a talk and it's you taking it's someone else sharing with you, and then you're sharing about yourself and they're sharing about themselves, no harm, no foul, right? But you brought up another point, which is, what do you do when somebody is narcissistically talking only about them and you don't feel like there's a place to enter?
Right. Okay. It's it's just about what I want to do, what I want to go, what I want to believe, what I want to,
Right.
It's all. So
all,
between the you and the I can become narcissistic.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And one way to deal with somebody who's narcissistic is to say to them, I want to share with you a story if you're interested. Or, I'd like to express my feeling or my opinion on this if you'd like to hear it.
So this is done at the level of conscious, when somebody is completely mindful of what they are using the word I so frequently, right? But we are also talking, when we talk about ego, we are talking about unconscious.
Well, no, what I'm saying right now is somebody is doing something and you need to bring their attention to what it is you want.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, because we can always focus on whatever we want to focus on. And if we focus on what we want, then we're moving toward a positive solution. If we focus on what we don't want, we're moving toward a negative solution. So I don't want you to keep talking about yourself. That's different than I'd like to share with you some of my thoughts and feelings if you want to hear them.
Right, so then that's how we can express what we want in a positive way versus, just putting the other person down.
Right.
You always talk about yourself. You never leave room for me to say what I want. It's all about you. It's all about, how to spend your Saturday night. It's always,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I just did was, for people who can see me, is I put my finger up.
Right.
Okay. That's what you can do behaviorally. If you start sharing and the person cuts you off, you didn't cut me off. I'm just saying. You
didn't cut me off.
No, you didn't cut me off. No. But you can use a behavioral technique where you just put your finger up. The person will stop talking because they see your finger up, and you can say, "I wasn't finished."
Right, or you can do this and time out. Let's
Yes.
stop.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break from just keep talking and continuously talking. Hear me out. Let's just give me a space here. I want to enter into your space. Yeah.
And then, of course, if you find that it's a lot of work to communicate and you have to do that quite a bit, then that may be a person that you feel less inclined to deal with, because you see the person is requiring too much energy.
Right.
And that's okay too. We get to choose. Life gives us a smorgasbord, right, of choices, and a smorgasbord of people. And if we don't like one dish, it's okay to say, not my favorite, and go to another dish, right?
And it doesn't mean that if, like you said, the dish is not your favorite, it's not a good dish.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, your taste bud is not favoring that dish.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And we know that, we are, creatures of wanted varieties in our life.
Yes.
Of course, that doesn't mean, variety in our sexual relationship after we're married, right? We don't want that.
Okay.
Well, when we are in a committed relationship, we are committed. That's why we call it committed relationship, not an option to variety relationship.
Okay. Well, there are people who think that if you're in a monogamous relationship, you should be committed.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm using that word metaphorically, right? In other words, like committed to an insane asylum.
Right.
So okay. Moving right along. How can we use the word you and I in a way that's more productive?
I'm sure you're gonna tell us.
when you say things like that, I start to feel scared. When you say things like that, I start to feel curious. When you express yourself that way, I start to feel sad. So that's the proper use of you. I'm talking about what you're doing, and I'm talking about my response, rather than giving the you message whether I agree with you or not. You're wrong.
Yeah, so then the focus is on feelings,
Yes.
When you say that, I feel like powerless. When you say that, I feel angry. When you say that, or when you don't say that, or when you don't do that, or when you don't bring up, or so. It's not just saying something, it's also behavior is part of communication. Making choices and decisions are part of communication.
Yes.
Right. So when you do, or you whatever, I feel as a result.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing that I want to bring up is any kind of disparaging comment about a person.
Mm-hmm.
This is especially true with people that you care about the most.
Mm-hmm.
So with your children, with your partner, and with your close friends, but anybody, any kind of disparaging remark is an unhealthy way of expressing yourself and causes pain to the other person. Unfortunately, in the past few years, we've gotten into that a lot, where we confuse disagreement with dislike for the person.
Right. Exactly.
And a person is not just what they're saying at any given moment, or isn't just what their opinion is on any given topic. And a person is much more. We are very deep as spiritual beings on this planet. We have a lot of things going on inside of us.
Yes.
A lot of layers. And so,
many of them we are not aware of.
And many of them we're not aware of, but we are very, very complex creatures.
Yes.
So because we disagree on one particular thing doesn't mean that we're unworthy or that we deserve to be attacked verbally.
Exactly. So differences of opinion, differences of what we want, it doesn't mean that we are not fit for each other. It just means that we're not understanding each other. And that's the key point. And we are hopeful that the tips we offered you today can be beneficial to you, since now that most families are mandatory staying at home, and now they are have to end up communicating with each other 24/7.
Right.
And these tips hopefully will make it easier on you to communicate, to talk, and then make a better situation and a healthier one for yourself. We are at the end of our program, and we wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you back next Friday. Have a wonderful week, and don't forget, all you need is love.
And we're going to talk next time about more communication techniques and exercises, and we wish you a safe and healthy week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.